The neighbors are watching Marta Vaszily dig a hole in November, and they are laughing at her impossible effort. She is 19 years old, 5 feet, and 2 inches of wiry muscle and stubborn. Cold-hardened silence, she is swinging a pickaxe into the frozen Montana earth with a fury that produces one sound, only the hard ring of iron on stone. The ground at this elevation freezes solid by mid-October in 1901. Everyone knows you do not dig in November, you survive, you huddle, you pray, your woodpile is deep. Except Marta Vaszily, who arrived from the Hungarian lowlands with a cloth bundle and $4 to $3. She is not digging a root cellar or a well, she is digging a room 12 feet wide, 8 feet into the hillside. A room she intends to live in when it drops to 55 below. The locals speak of the cold like something shameful, something that should not be possible, where people live inside that room. When it is finally finished, the temperature will be a steady 52 degrees. She knows this the way her grandmother knew it, through generations' knowledge from the earth, from watching building and staying warm. She has seen it done and knows it works perfectly. First, she must dig. While the valley laughs at her, let it all come. The Montana winter is finally arriving. Gunder Farkas, a thick man from Helena, evicted her ruthlessly. He arrived at her owner room shack left by Uncle Bell. Gunder stood in the doorway with a paper and smirk. Land reverts. He said you must leave by first snow. The first snow arrived on October 28th, sealing her fate. $11 remained after buying her iron pickaxe, spade, and rope. She slept under stars, dreaming of Miskolc's warm sunken hillsides. On the third morning, she struck the earth's frozen surface. The valley mocked her, yet she built something entirely new. Franklin Hooper arrived on his roan horse, looking down contemptuously. He watched her 3-foot excavation with the patient arrogance of authority. You're digging your own grave. He warned of the deep freeze. Marta understood him perfectly, her English far better than he assumed. Yet she chose a pointed, stubborn silence. Her refusal to answer offended the rancher more than any defiant reply ever could have. 2 days later, Agnes Hooper and Doris Schraber arrived at the edge of the 6-foot excavation. They looked down with the specific pity reserved for women who have made catastrophic mistakes. Agnes suggested a church in Billings with warm beds, hot meals, and no questions asked. I have a situation, Marta replied from the bottom of the hole. I am digging. Doris claimed the trauma of her past had left Marta not right in the head. Marta kept digging with $9 left, and a vision clearer than anything else. The valley lacked the ancient knowledge passed down through generations of women watching the earth. The earth is warm, a secret held deep within the iron-hard Montana soil. Not warm like a fire, warm like a sleeping body, slow and vast and patient, deep enough the soil maintains a constant temperature year-round. Her grandmother called it the earth's breath, the proper term known years later as geothermal mass, provides a steady hidden warmth below the frost. Below the frost line, the ground holds a steady temperature regardless of what the sky is doing. Not warm enough for comfort alone, but warm enough to be a foundation to start from. But Marta is not just digging a hole. What she is building is more sophisticated than that. The plan is this: excavate a chamber 12 feet wide, 16 feet long, and 8 feet deep. Cedar poles from a copse half a mile east will form the roof frame notch to seat over those poles. Brush 8 inches of clay and grass mixture, then 6 inches of soil and flat field stones. The total roof will weigh 11 tons across 12 poles, appearing as a low natural mound like a badger den. Scaled up, she knows this. She does not care. The entry is an angled tunnel, sloping gently into the hillside. A deliberate right-angle turn prevents sinking cold air from entering packed clay and grass walls. 2 feet thick provide natural insulation. A second door creates a 4-foot dead air airlock against shock. Then there is the Kemence, the massive stone sleeping platform. Dense basalt holds heat while sandstone splits and fails. A small firebox at one end fits a single bucket of coal. A horizontal flue runs 32 feet in a serpentine path. Hot gas surrenders heat to the basalt before finally escaping. The principle is thermal mass storage. You do not heat the air, you charge the stone like a battery. Once the fire burns down, the stone radiates stored heat for 12 hours at a slow, steady rate. The temperature will not spike and crash. It will hold steady, resisting the lethal Montana sky. Her grandmother heated a hillside room in Miskolc for 40 winters using this same ancient method. Marta does not need to understand physics. She only needs to build before her money runs out. 8 days of pickaxe work. Her hands blister and tear until the skin hardens into something unrecognizable. At 42 inches, she hits the frost line below it. The earth is measurably, undeniably warmer. She presses her wrist to the wall, a practiced habit learned from watching her grandmother at 6 feet deep. The soil temperature reads 60 degrees. The warmth is not imagined. She records this in her Lutheran almanac with 3 underlines, and a small hopeful cross. Marta drags 12 heavy cedar poles across the frozen, unsympathetic ground on a sledge made of fence, boards a deep yellow-green bruise, spreads across her shoulders the painful mark of 3 days' brutal labor. She notches the poles and seats them into wall channels, wedging them tight with green cedar shims over the poles. She layers brush clay and fieldstones, creating a heavy 11-ton natural mound from the outside. It is just a low mound, a subtle swell in the hillside, almost invisible. Franklin Hooper rides past and laughs, mocking her genuine badger hole to the empty air. On day 11, a seam of sandy gravel gives way, and the east wall collapses into rubble. Standing in the ruin with only $6 left, she realizes conventional solutions are impossible. She digs deeper, lining the failed section with flat fieldstones mortared with clay slurry. This took 2 days, and 80 pounds of fieldstone carried from the creek bed. She hits a seam of wet clay in the angled entry tunnel. Cold water seeps in, filling her boot every 20 minutes. She sits for a day, eating bread and thinking the solution comes. She will lower the tunnel floor. She lays creek stones in a V-shape to direct runoff. The water disappears, and the tunnel floor stays walkable. It costs her another day and a permanently damp boot by day 17. The badger den is rough but real. The neighbor's laughter fades, replaced by something harder to name. Heinrich Schraber watches her with a focused, calculating expression. He tells Doris that Marta is simply very determined. Heinrich says nothing as Doris mocks Marta's freezing hole. Marta collects basalt fieldstones, meticulously separating them from lighter sandstone. Her grandmother once demonstrated how sandstone cracks, while basalt holds. The sandstone fractured instantly, but the dark basalt held strong. 400 pounds of sorted basalt stacked along the wall. It is no table, it is the vital heart. The Kemence construction requires 4 days of the most precise stonework. Base courses form the walls of the small hot firebox. From the firebox, the flue begins its long sideways journey. The serpentine channel runs the full length of the platform. Gentle turns slow the gas before exiting through the chimney. 32 feet of heat surrendered to stone before escaping. She has 20 cents left, spending 16 on a small sack of coal from the Billings yard. The remaining 4 cents stay in her cloth bundle. Because 4 cents is not nothing, she moves into the chamber on November 14th, finally escaping the open Montana sky. That night she lights the firebox with pine scraps, and coal piece by piece. Warmth rises from the stone sleeping platform, entirely unlike the sharp heat of a stove. At midnight, she removes 1 blanket, finding the stone's heat sufficient and steady. Morning measurements: 22 below zero outside, 44 degrees inside the stone chamber. She records the 6 to 6 degree difference in the almanac, underlining it 3 times. The earth gives back what you give to the earth. She prays. The valley remains unaware, still laughing at the girl in the whole. Piotr Zawadzki arrives, a Polish farmer seeking the rumored earthen house. Useful information travels slowly across the vast frozen Montana isolation. Piotr knocks on the tunnel door, making Marta laugh with surprise. Piotr stands in the chamber, inspecting the stone Kemence platform. He crouches and places his bare palm on the warm stone floor, heating. He says, "My grandfather had this same system." They recognize each other as survivors from different ancient lands. Everyone will want one once the true cold finally arrives. The real cold comes in 3 days, he warns her. He is exactly right. On December 12th, the storm arrives. The Great Montana Storm arrives first as a stillness, an uncanny heavy silence in the valley. Frozen trees stop their creaking, and cattle stand motionless in the fields, heads bowed. Low, the northwest sky turns a nameless color: bruised gray, sickly green, and ominous yellow. This nameless weather carries everything the Arctic has descending upon the Montana Valley. The wind roars at 4 to 3 miles per hour, gusting to 61. As the storm hits, a bass roar builds from nothing to everything. A terrifying force of nature. Horizontal ice pellets strip bark from trees and drive through every gap. In shacks, the temperature drops 22 degrees in the first 2 hours of the storm. By midnight, the shack thermometer reads a staggering 37 below zero. Dawn of December 13th. brings a lethal 49 degrees below zero. By noon, it hits 55 below zero, the number that kills. Franklin Hooper's barn loses 2 pigs to the lethal cold single-thickness pine boards, offer no protection against the Arctic wind. Hooper runs out of firewood by the morning of the 13th. 14-year-old Carl returns with frost on his eyebrows, and pine the woodpile has frozen into an unbreakable solid. Mass Franklin Hooper burns his kitchen chairs that afternoon to survive. The rancher is no longer laughing at the badger den. Doris Schraber's water barrel freezes solid inside her own home iron tools contract, and clang waking the Schrabers at night. Doris lies awake in the dark. Silent and fearful widow McCreary burns green wood, her chimney igniting at night. The chimney fire is visible from 6 miles away. She stands at the Hoopers looking at her ruined home. The storm batters the small mound on Bella's land, but the earth does nothing. It is earth. The wind presses against it, and the earth does not move. Twice a day, Marta clears the tunnel entrance in a brief third-icecon task. Outside is 55 below. Inside 14 hours after the fire, it's 4 to 6. She checks 4 times, pressing her bare wrist to the south wall. Piotr Zawodzki's thermometer confirms the inside. Temperature is 4 to 6 degrees. She squints through the tunnel, seeing negative 55 on the shack. 101 degrees of difference between the earth and sky. She sits on the warm stone, eating unfrozen beans in safety. Her water pot remains liquid, kept against the warm south wall. Marta knows what this number means. The earth was right. Marta lights the Kemence on December 14th to mark her victory. She watches the coal take hold, the firebox glowing deep orange. The chamber reaches 52 degrees by midday, and holds steady. The storm breaks on December 15th after 3 punishing days. 27 inches of snow cover the valley in clarifying white. The post-storm sky is a deep painted impossible blue. Marta emerges from her tunnel at first light. Standing tall, smoke from every chimney rises perfectly straight. In the stillness, neighbors move between structures, assessing the damage left behind. The dark stain of the widow McCreary's ruins marks the snow. Franklin Hooper approaches on foot, walking with a defeated posture. He stops at the mound as Marta chips ice away. He is quiet for a long moment, looking at her with a haunted, hollowed expression. What's it like in there? Franklin Hooper finally asks her. 48 degrees this morning. Before the fire, Marta Vaszily replies. Simply, Hooper stands in 21 below, having lost pigs and chairs. McCreary lost half her house. He says, his voice low and hollow. I know. Marta says, I burned my kitchen chairs. He adds, Marta stops working and waits for the rancher to continue. How'd you know to do this? Hooper asks in disbelief. My grandmother showed me. Marta says, standing by her mound. Hooper turns his hat in his hands, his mocking gone. Your grandmother, he says with a new slow-growing respect. She was very smart, Marta says, defending her ancient kin. Reckon she was. Hooper admits, finally meaning every word. 2 days later, Heinrich Schraber arrives at the earthen chamber. He traces the subsurface channel with a thick finger. The heat travels through here before the chimney. Heinrich observes. Yes, Marta answers. And the stone holds it. He adds, the stone holds it for 12 hours, sometimes even longer. Heinrich nods with the approval of a master blacksmith's eyes. I could make iron flue sections for a better seal. Yes, Marta says simply, that would certainly be much better. There is a long, thoughtful pause between the two builders. I could help you build another, show others. Heinrich says he does not apologize, and Marta doesn't need him to. He offers the translation of her knowledge for the valley. The blacksmith's eye confirms what her hands have said. That would be welcome, Marta says, accepting his endorsement. Piotr arrives with a smoked ham, beans, and oilskin-wrapped tools. He places a hand plane and chisels on the platform for the spring building. Piotr tells her with quiet certainty, the land may not be mine. Marta reminds him cautiously, Gunder Farkas's hotel pipes froze. He has other problems now. Marta picks up the drawknife, feeling its weight and balance. Your grandmother taught you well, Piotr says, pulling on gloves. She said to ask the earth properly. Marta explains quietly. She said the asking is the digging. Marta concludes thoughtfully. Piotr nods, once pulls his coat tight, and steps out into the bitter Montana cold. Marta remains in the warm chamber, the stone platform holding its heat like a sleeping body. She opens her almanac to a blank page and begins sketching a larger 3-room structure. She draws the serpentine flue, the airlock doors, and the narrow south-facing light shafts. The sketches flow in 10 minutes. She has carried this design for 3 long months outside an early meadowlark, sings its melody rising over the white silence of the valley. Marta closes her book, grips her iron pickaxe, and heads out to break new ground.